Hi and welcome. Thanks for joining us as we take this opportunity to look at how we can utilise Office 365 on our iPads. So let's get started with today's lesson. Okay, so as you can see, we are already in our Teams section and we have our class that we've previously been working on. Let's take a look at how we can get started with Class Notebook, some of the features within Class Notebook. Now, this is just a getting started guide. There is so much that you can do with Class Notebook, but let's just see how we can get set up with our class and some of the key features that you might want to use with it. So I'm going to make sure I'm in the general channel here, and then I'm going to go across to more. And we'll notice this from before when we've looked at assignments and grades, we now also have access to our class notebook. So I'm going to go ahead and tap on that. Now, because I'm working on my iPad in this situation, it's going to give me the option to set up my OneNote Class Notebook. I'm just going to go with a blank one. It's going to go through all the steps of what I want that notebook to look like. So this is really, really useful to sort of go through as you're creating your notebooks. In this instance, it just talks through the kind of basic elements of your class notebook. So your collaboration space where everybody can edit. Okay, this is that kind of shared workspace, really, really good for blended learning, those sorts of activities, because everyone has access to that same space. I might add things in as a teacher. I want students to add things. You know, people might go off and do their own bits of research, and we can compile everything into one place. And of course, we'll have a look at how you can separate that if I want to have different workspaces for different groups. Content library, that's teacher controlled, so I can add the content and edit. Students can only view this, so think it could be timetables, it could be assignment overviews, could be module overviews. It's the stuff that I want to share with the group, but I don't necessarily want them to be able to change any of those things. And then finally, we have our student notebooks. I can edit those things, student can edit those things, but students don't get to see each other's. Okay, so this is a private space between myself and the student where we can have dialogue, we can do marking, we can answer questions, etc. So, this is a separate entity. Although on your notebook, you will see every student in your class, on their notebook, they will only see their own notebook. So I tap next, and then I can start to think about my sections. How do I want to set this up for each of the students? Now, each of these can be renamed. You can choose what goes into them. These are just the overviews that they give you from the setup guide. And there's some really, really useful things to just start off with. So, handouts, this is the stuff I want the students to have access to. Class notes, this is our discussion from the class. Here's some homework or home learning or whatever you might want to call it. Activities I want you to do, and just some basic quizzes, So actually the sections titles here are a good start point, but you might have something more bespoke for your class, or it might not be an actual teaching class that you're using this for. This could be like an extracurricular club, and you might want to put completely different things into this space. And of course, you can add in your own sections as well. I'm going to stick with the 4 just so we can go through what they look like when we create the class. And the second I click create, it's going to create this class notebook for me. So once it goes through that whole process, it's just compiling all the data that I've put into, how I want my class notebook to look. It's adding in those student names. It's adding in a separate section for each one of those students, etc. And you'll see that over here, I've got my Digital Foundations course that we were just in Teams. And it's created this section. We've looked at this before, the collaboration space, content library. And then each one of the students that I've added in has been given their own separate notebook. Now, that's a really, really useful feature. This, from a teacher's point of view, I could see everybody's. From the student's point of view, they just see it as their notebook. They don't get to see everybody else's. So let's just take a look at what those different sections look like. Obviously, we have a welcome area. There's a welcome to class notebook. Useful to keep this in. It just gives you the overview of what each of the sections are. It's just that kind of, reference piece to go back to if you're not sure what each section refers to, and then some frequently asked questions about what happens in this section in Microsoft Teams, and how does this link to Notebook, all of those sorts of things. So that's what the welcome is. Obviously, you could put a specific welcome for your course, for your teaching that you're going to be doing. Then we have our collaboration space. Again, gives you the overview of getting started, what we do with this, useful to keep in your documents, just if you ever need to go back at any point and think, how do I do that? But also a place, this is your collaboration. This is where you want to have things that people can edit at the same time. It could be that it's that brainstorming of an activity. It's basically the place where everybody can see and edit. The content library, this is slightly different. Again, we have our overview, but the content library here, this is not stuff that you want students to be able to edit. This is stuff that you want to be able to just share as view only. So in this context, I've just put in some session presentations that the students would be able to just open. I've just uploaded them from my iPad from Keynote directly into OneNote, because it just works seamlessly, and I'll show you that in a second. But these are things that I just want the students to be able to see. And then what you have for each student is that part where we created before, which kind of levels do I want them to have notes in. So for this case, I've got assessment, class notes, presentations, and quizzes. This is where the students keep hold of all of their bits of information. So any assessment that they do is kept in their assessment page, and I have view of that all the time, so I can just jump in and check what they're doing. I can check on their class notes, and maybe I want to add some things or question them about some of the notes they've been making, any presentations they're doing, or links to any quizzes that we might make and share out as a form of AFL. And again, I have that for all of my students. And now it's really easy to just make additional sections. You'll see along the bottom, if I'm in this collaboration space, I can tap on add a page, and I can say, let's say getting to know each other. Might be a good activity to do at the start of the year if you're working remotely. And then we've got this space just instantly created. It's created this page on the side. And then I've got all the access to those commonly used tools that you'll be familiar with if you're using word processing tools and PowerPoint, etc. I've got all of the ability to add in the text, insert pictures and videos and all of those things, draw directly on the canvas, and view things in a slightly different way if I need to. And of course, we'll talk about immersive reader a little bit later in other videos. So this might be a space that I want to just have them, input their own information. It could be that we say, it'd be great to just identify something about yourself. So I might draw on a screen and say, my name's Matt. It could be that, I like Liverpool, whatever it might be. But you've just got this opportunity, this big canvas to be able to share information with all of your students. Lots and lots of great features in here. If you've watched the whiteboard app, you'll see there's some very similar kind of tools across the top here that you might be used to using. We can do the ink to shape, so if you're not great at drawing or you want something to look a little bit more refined, you have that option in there. And there are specific, other drawing modes that you might want to go into. So if you don't have the pencil, you can then activate it so that it will draw with your finger instead. Shapes to add in, and all of the pens that we looked at before in terms of being able to specify what I want those pens to look like. So lots and lots of things that you can do within the notebook. So that's it, just as a basic overview of the things that you can do with Class Notebook, how to just get set up with your Class Notebook. But definitely have a play around and think about how you would use that in your class to enable students to focus their work. Now, I did say that one other feature that's really, really neat in this, if I jump out and go to Keynote, let's say I'm making my presentations and I want my students to be able to access their work. So I'm going to just open up one of our presentations. So let's take a look at this one here. And I'm going to tap on the ellipsis and go to share. And you'll see that OneNote is an option of somewhere I can share this to. So I'm just going to tap on OneNote. It opens up that I want it to be shared to that Digital Foundations notebook. It's going to go into that content library section. I can be very specific about where I want that to go, but I'm happy with where that says it's going. I can give it a title. It takes the title from the presentation itself, which is really, really nice and easy. And I can add in some notes, etc. If there's any other information I want to add to this, it might be that I want them to watch this presentation or view through this presentation in a specific time or go to a specific slide of the presentation. And then I just simply tap send, and that's done. That's uploaded that then to my OneNote. So in a second, if I go to my content library, that's then added in down the bottom here. So this is the one that's just been added in, that Elements of Learning presentation. You'll see that it's got the same date stamp and time on there. So again, really, really simple way to be creative on your iPad. Doesn't have to all be done in a specific file type. I like to use the Keynote tools and the iWork apps on my iPad. It's all interchangeable. Doesn't matter what you do your creation in. We're just looking at how OneNote can be used as a place to store that information for your students.